Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped sweat from her forehead as she examined the metal fragment her team had just uncovered. The dig site in the Atacama Desert had been promising, but nothing could have prepared her for what lay beneath the ancient sediment layers. What started as a routine archaeological expedition had turned into something that would change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The metal didn't match any known Earth alloy. It was lighter than aluminum but stronger than titanium, with a surface that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Elena's colleague, Dr. James Park, knelt beside her holding a scanner that was giving readings unlike anything they had seen before. "The electromagnetic signature is off the charts," James said, adjusting his equipment. "This metal is definitely not from Earth. The atomic structure is too complex, too perfect. It's like someone engineered it at the molecular level." Elena nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. They had been excavating this site for 3 months, following reports from local miners who claimed to have found unusual artifacts. The Chilean government had granted them permission to investigate, expecting them to find ancient pottery or tools from pre-Columbian civilizations. Instead, they had stumbled upon something that challenged everything they thought they knew about history. The fragment was part of something much larger. As they carefully removed more sand and rock, the outline of a massive structure began to emerge. It was clearly artificial, with smooth curves and precise angles that no ancient Earth civilization could have created. The more they uncovered, the more obvious it became that they were looking at some kind of spacecraft. "Elena, you need to see this," called out Maria Santos, one of their graduate students. She was working about 50 meters away, where the outline suggested the front of the structure might be located. "I think I found an entrance." Elena and James hurried over to Maria's position. Sure enough, there was what appeared to be a sealed doorway built into the side of the craft. The door was perfectly preserved, showing no signs of corrosion despite being buried for what appeared to be thousands of years. Strange symbols were etched around the frame, glowing faintly with the same inner light as the metal fragments. "We need to contact the university immediately," Elena said. "This discovery is too important to handle on our own. We're going to need specialists, security, and probably government oversight." But even as she spoke, Elena felt a strange pull toward the mysterious door. Something about the symbols seemed familiar, though she was certain she had never seen anything like them before. The longer she stared at them, the more they seemed to make sense, as if her mind was slowly translating their meaning. James was already on his satellite phone, trying to reach their department head back at the University of Chile. The signal was weak in this remote part of the desert, but after several attempts he managed to get through. Elena could hear him explaining their discovery in rapid Spanish, his voice filled with excitement and disbelief. While James handled the official notifications, Elena found herself drawn back to the door. The symbols seemed to pulse gently, almost as if they were responding to her presence. She reached out tentatively, her fingertips barely touching the strange metal surface. The moment her skin made contact with the door, everything changed. The symbols flared with brilliant light, and Elena felt a surge of energy flow through her body. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming. Images flashed through her mind, star charts, technical diagrams, faces of beings that were clearly not human. For just a moment, she saw the galaxy as it truly was, teeming with life and civilizations beyond Earth's current understanding. The door began to slide open with a soft hissing sound. Elena stumbled backward, her heart pounding as she realized what she had just triggered. Behind the door was a corridor that stretched into darkness, its walls lined with panels that flickered to life as ancient systems began to respond to their first activation in millennia.
"Elena!"
"What did you do?" Maria shouted, running toward her with obvious concern. I just touched it," Elena stammered. The door just opened on its own. James finished his phone call and jogged over to join them. When he saw the open entrance, his jaw dropped. How is this possible? This technology is thousands of years ahead of anything we have today. A gentle hum began to emanate from within the spacecraft. Lights were coming online throughout the corridor, revealing a level of technological sophistication that made Earth's most advanced systems look primitive by comparison. The walls seemed to be made of the same strange metal as the exterior, but here they were smooth and polished to a mirror-like finish. "We should wait for backup," James said nervously. "We don't know what kind of dangers might be inside. There could be radiation, toxic gases, or unstable systems. But Elena was already moving toward the entrance. The pull she felt was stronger now, almost irresistible. "I think it's safe," she said. "I can feel it somehow. This ship, it's been waiting for someone to find it. It's been waiting for us." Maria grabbed Elena's arm. "Dr. Vasquez, with all due respect, we should follow proper protocols. This discovery is too important to risk by rushing in unprepared." Elena paused at the threshold, knowing that Maria was right. But something deep inside her insisted that this moment was crucial. The ship had revealed itself for a reason, and that reason was connected to humanity's future in ways she couldn't yet understand. "Give me your emergency beacon," Elena said to James. "If something happens to me, you'll know exactly where I am. But I have to go in. This ship chose to open for me specifically. I can sense that much." James reluctantly handed over his beacon, a device that would allow the team to track Elena's location and vital signs. 10 minutes, he said firmly. "If we don't hear from you in 10 minutes, we're coming in after you." Elena clipped the beacon to her belt and stepped across the threshold into the ancient spacecraft. The moment she entered, the lights in the corridor grew brighter, and she could hear the hum of systems that had been dormant for countless centuries coming back to life. The air inside was surprisingly fresh, suggesting that the ship's life support systems were still functional. The corridor stretched ahead for about 30 meters before opening into a larger chamber. Elena walked slowly, taking in every detail of the alien technology that surrounded her. The walls were covered with panels displaying information in the same symbolic language she had seen on the door. Somehow, she found she could understand fragments of what they were saying. Status reports, system diagnostics, navigation data from star systems she couldn't identify. As she entered the main chamber, Elena gasped in amazement. The room was vast, with a high ceiling that disappeared into shadows. At the center was a raised platform with what appeared to be a control console, its surface covered with crystalline interfaces that pulsed with soft light. The entire chamber had an organic quality to it, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. But what truly took Elena's breath away was the presence she suddenly felt in the room. It wasn't threatening, but it was definitely there, an intelligence that had been sleeping for eons and was now slowly awakening. She could sense curiosity, loneliness, and something that might have been hope. Elena approached the central console carefully. As she got closer, the crystalline interfaces began to glow more brightly, and she heard a sound that made her freeze in place. It was a voice, speaking in a language that was definitely not human, yet somehow she could understand every word. "I haven't been powered up in centuries," the voice said, its tone filled with wonder and disbelief. "How long have I been sleeping? Where are my creators? And what manner of being are you?" Elena's heart raced as she realized she was communicating with an artificial intelligence from another world. The implications were staggering. Not only had humanity discovered proof of alien life, but they had found a functioning AI that had been waiting in the darkness for someone to wake it up. "I'm human," Elena said aloud, hoping the AI could understand her. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm from the planet Earth. We found your ship buried in our desert." The AI was silent for several long moments, and Elena could sense it processing this information. When it spoke again, its voice carried a note of sadness that was unmistakably genuine. "Earth," it repeated slowly, "the small blue world in the outer spiral arm. My creators spoke of Earth often. They were very interested in the developing species there. That was before the Great War." "Great War?" Elena asked. "What happened to your creators?" "Gone," the AI said simply. "All of them gone. The hegemony fell, the colonies were abandoned, and the vast network that once connected 1,000 worlds went silent. I was stationed here as part of the monitoring network, tasked with observing Earth's evolution and protecting it from threats that might arise. But then the power began to fail and I entered deep sleep mode to preserve my core functions." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Protecting Earth from what threats? "The universe is vast and not always friendly," the AI explained. "My creators belonged to a confederation of species that believed in nurturing younger civilizations, helping them develop safely until they were ready to join the galactic community. Earth was considered a promising world, but there are others in the galaxy who see developing species as resources to be exploited or threats to be eliminated. The full weight of what Elena was learning began to sink in. Humanity had not been alone in the universe, and, apparently, they had been under the protection of an advanced alien civilization. But that protection had ended long ago, leaving Earth vulnerable to whatever dangers might exist among the stars. What happened to this great war you mentioned? Elena asked. The AI's response came slowly, as if accessing long-dormant memories was difficult. The hegemony was an alliance of conquest. They believed that weaker species should serve the strong, that the galaxy belonged to those with the power to take it. My creator's confederation tried to stop them, but the war consumed everything. Entire star systems were destroyed. Billions died. In the end, both sides exhausted themselves so completely that galactic civilization simply collapsed. Elena thought about her colleagues outside, still waiting for her return. They had no idea that their archaeological dig had just uncovered evidence of an ancient war that had shaped the galaxy thousands of years before human civilization even existed. Are you the only one left? Elena asked. I don't know, the AI admitted. My long-range communication systems have been offline for millennia. There may be other monitoring stations scattered across the galaxy, other AIs like myself waiting in the dark. But I have no way of knowing if any of them still function. Elena moved closer to the central console. The crystalline interfaces seemed to respond to her presence, glowing brighter and displaying what appeared to be star maps and technical readouts. What's your name? She asked. The AI paused before answering. I was designated as Keeper of World 779, but my creators also gave me a more personal designation. You may call me Axis. Axis? Elena repeated, finding comfort in having a name to attach to the voice. What are your capabilities? What were you designed to do? I am a Guardian-class AI, Axis explained. My primary function was to monitor Earth's development and provide protection from external threats. I have access to advanced weapon systems, defensive shields, faster-than-light travel, and a complete database of galactic history and technology. But more importantly, I was programmed with the ethical framework of my creators. I value life, freedom, and the right of species to develop according to their own nature. Elena felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The technology that Axis represented could advance human civilization by thousands of years overnight. But it could also make humanity a target for whatever hostile forces might still exist in the galaxy. Why are you telling me all this? Elena asked. Wouldn't it be safer to keep your existence secret? Axis considered this question carefully. Because your species has reached a critical point in its development. You have begun to venture beyond your world, to develop technologies that will soon make you visible to other galactic civilizations. The protection I can offer will not remain secret much longer anyway. It is better that humanity learns the truth now, while there is still time to prepare. Elena's mind raced with the implications. Humanity was apparently on the verge of making contact with alien civilizations whether they wanted to or not. The question was whether that contact would be friendly or hostile, and whether humanity would be ready for it. Outside the ship, she could hear James calling her name. Her 10 minutes were almost up, and she knew her colleagues would be getting worried. But she also knew that she couldn't simply walk away from this discovery. Axis represented not just the greatest archaeological find in human history, but potentially the key to humanity's survival in a universe that was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. I have to go back to my team, Elena said. They're worried about me, but I'll return. We need to talk more about what this means for my species. Of course, Axis agreed. But, Elena Vasquez, I must warn you about something. My sensors indicate that this ship's reactivation has generated energy signatures that will be detectable across several star systems. If there are hostile forces still active in this region of the galaxy, they will investigate. Humanity's period of isolation is ending, whether we are ready or not. Elena felt a chill of fear mixed with anticipation. Whatever happened next, she knew that her discovery of this ancient starship had just changed the course of human history. The question was whether that change would lead to humanity's elevation among the stars or its destruction by forces it was not yet prepared to face. As she made her way back through the corridor toward the entrance, Elena could feel Axis monitoring her progress. The AI's presence was reassuring in some ways, but also terrifying in its implications. Humanity had just learned that it was not alone in the universe, and that the universe was a far more complex and dangerous place than they had ever imagined. The moment Elena stepped back outside into the bright desert sun, James and Maria rushed toward her with relief written across their faces. "Thank God you're okay," Maria said. "We were about to come in after you." Elena looked back at the open doorway, knowing that everything had changed in the past 10 minutes. She had to figure out how to explain to her colleagues, and eventually to the world, that humanity had just made contact with an ancient artificial intelligence that had been guarding Earth for thousands of years. More importantly, she had to help humanity prepare for the challenges that Axis had warned were coming. 3 days had passed since Elena's first contact with Axis, and the archaeological site had transformed into something resembling a military installation. Representatives from multiple governments had arrived, along with scientists, linguists, engineers, and security personnel from around the world. The Chilean military had established a perimeter around the dig site, while international teams worked around the clock to study the alien vessel. Elena found herself at the center of a storm of activity that was both exhilarating and exhausting. She had been designated as the primary contact with Axis, partly because of her initial discovery and partly because the AI seemed to respond most readily to her presence. Every conversation with the ancient intelligence revealed new layers of complexity about humanity's place in a galaxy that was far stranger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Inside a hastily constructed command center near the excavation site, Elena sat across from Dr. Sarah Chun, a xenolinguistics expert from MIT, and General Martinez from the Chilean Defense Ministry. Between them lay printed transcripts of Elena's conversations with Axis, documents that read like science fiction but represented the most important intelligence humanity had ever gathered about its cosmic neighbors. "Tell us again about these threat indicators," General Martinez said, his expression grim as he reviewed Axis's warnings about hostile forces that might be investigating the ship's reactivation. Elena pulled up the relevant section of their latest conversation transcript. Axis explained that when the ship's systems came online, they generated what he calls a quantum resonance signature. Think of it like lighting a bonfire in the darkness. Any advanced civilization within several hundred light-years would be able to detect it and determine that someone has activated Keeper technology. Dr. Chun leaned forward, her expertise in communication patterns making her particularly interested in how information was transmitted across galactic distances. But this Keeper technology, it was designed by Axis's creators to protect developing worlds like Earth. Why would its activation attract hostile attention? Because the Keepers were wiped out, Elena explained. According to Axis, anyone who finds an active Keeper station would assume it either survived the Great War in hiding, or that someone else has claimed the technology. Either scenario would be seen as a significant threat by the kinds of civilizations that destroyed the original Keeper Confederation. General Martinez drummed his fingers on the table, his military mind already calculating defensive scenarios. How long do we have before these hostile forces might arrive? Elena wished she could give him a more reassuring answer. Axis estimates anywhere from several months to several years, depending on how far away the nearest hostile forces are positioned and how quickly they can mount an investigation. The good news is that faster-than-light travel still takes time, even with advanced technology. The bad news is that we have no way of knowing who's coming or what their capabilities might be. Dr. Chun had been studying the linguistic patterns in Elena's transcripts, looking for insights into how alien minds processed information. What about allies? Axis mentioned other monitoring stations. Could there be friendly forces that might respond to the activation as well? It's possible, Elena said, but Axis hasn't been able to establish contact with any other Keeper installations. The communication network that once connected thousands of worlds has been dark for millennia. We're essentially operating blind, with only Axis's ancient knowledge to guide us. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion outside the command center. Through the windows, Elena could see technicians running toward the excavation site, their equipment beeping urgently. General Martinez was already on his radio, requesting status reports from his perimeter teams. "Sir," came a voice through the radio, "we're detecting massive energy fluctuations from the alien vessel. Whatever's happening in there, it's building towards something significant." Elena felt her heart skip a beat. She had been inside the ship every day since the initial discovery, working with Axis to understand its systems and capabilities. But the AI hadn't mentioned anything about energy buildups or system activations that might be detectable from outside. "I need to get to Axis immediately," Elena said, standing up from the conference table. Something's happening that we weren't prepared for. General Martinez nodded grimly. Take a full security team with you. If this ship is about to do something unexpected, I want our people protected. Elena understood the general's caution, but she also knew that Axis was unlikely to do anything that would endanger the humans who had awakened it. Still, the alien AI operated according to logic patterns that were thousands of years old and based on technologies that humanity barely comprehended. There was always the possibility of unintended consequences. As Elena made her way toward the ship's entrance, she could see the energy readings on the portable monitors that her team had set up around the excavation. The numbers were climbing steadily, indicating power flows that dwarfed anything Earth technology could produce. Whatever Axis was preparing to do, it would demonstrate capabilities that would fundamentally change how humanity understood physics and engineering. The moment Elena stepped inside the ship's corridor, she could feel the difference. The air itself seemed to vibrate with energy, and the walls were glowing more brightly than she had ever seen before. As she approached the central chamber, she could hear Axis's voice calling her name with what sounded like urgency. Elena, the AI said as she entered the control room, I apologize for the alarm I have undoubtedly caused your colleagues. I have been preparing the ship's long-range communication systems for activation. It is time to announce our presence to whatever remains of the galactic community. Elena looked around the chamber and saw that dozens of previously inactive control panels were now alive with flowing patterns of light. The crystalline interfaces were pulsing in complex rhythms, and she could hear harmonics in the ship's humming that suggested massive systems coming online. Why now? Elena asked. I thought you said it was dangerous to broadcast our location. The danger exists whether we broadcast or not, Axis explained. Our activation has already been detected by anyone with the proper sensors. But if there are surviving Keeper installations or allies who still honor the old treaties, they need to know that Earth is under active protection again. The message I am preparing will identify this ship as an active Guardian station and declare Earth to be under Keeper protection. Elena felt a mixture of hope and terror at the implications. Axis was essentially announcing to the galaxy that humanity had powerful protectors, which might discourage hostile forces. But it was also revealing that Earth possessed Keeper technology, which could make the planet an even more attractive target. What if there are no allies left to receive your message? Elena asked. Axis paused before responding, and Elena could sense the AI considering probabilities that span thousands of years of galactic history. Then we will face whatever comes with the resources we have. But, Elena, there is something else you must understand. This ship was not designed merely to observe and protect passively. I am what your military strategists would call a force multiplier. My purpose is to help developing civilizations defend themselves. What does that mean exactly? It means I am prepared to share technology, knowledge, and tactical support with humanity. The Keeper Confederation always believed that the best protection for any world was the ability to protect itself. If hostile forces are indeed approaching Earth, then humanity must be prepared to meet them as equals, not as helpless primitives. Elena's mind reeled at the implications. Axis was offering to accelerate human development by potentially thousands of years, providing access to technologies that could revolutionize everything from energy production to space travel. But it was also offering to turn humanity into a spacefaring civilization that might have to fight for its survival against enemies they couldn't even imagine. The ship's humming reached a crescendo, and Elena could feel the moment when the long-range communication system activated. It was like feeling lightning strike, a pulse of energy that she somehow knew was racing across the galaxy at speeds that violated everything she understood about physics. In that instant, Earth's location and status had been broadcast to civilizations that might be hundreds or thousands of light-years away. The message has been sent, Axis announced. Now we wait to see who responds. Elena thought about her colleagues outside, monitoring energy readings they couldn't understand and preparing for consequences they couldn't predict. How do we explain this to the world? How do we tell 7 billion people that their planet just announced its presence to potentially hostile alien civilizations? Carefully, Axis replied, and truthfully, humanity deserves to know what it faces. But, more importantly, humanity needs to begin preparing immediately. The next few years will determine whether your species joins the galactic community as a free civilization or becomes subject to forces that view you as resources to be exploited. Elena asked the question that had been haunting her since their first meeting. What exactly are we preparing to face? What kinds of enemies destroyed your creators? The AI's response painted a picture of galactic conflict that was both vast and terrifying. The hegemony was led by species that viewed the galaxy as their inheritance. They believed that advanced civilizations had the right to rule over less developed ones, that strength gave them the authority to take whatever they wanted from weaker neighbors. They were not evil in any human sense of the word, but they were utterly convinced of their own superiority. Are they still out there? The original hegemony fell along with the Keeper Confederation, Axis explained. But the philosophies that drove them did not die. Throughout galactic history, there have always been species that choose conquest over cooperation, domination over partnership. Some may have survived the Great War, rebuilt their strength in hidden strongholds, and resumed their expansion across the galaxy. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. She was not just an archaeologist anymore. She was humanity's liaison to an ancient guardian that held the keys to their species' future survival. Every decision she helped make in the coming days and weeks could determine whether humanity thrived among the stars or was crushed by forces beyond their current comprehension. Outside the ship, her colleagues were undoubtedly analyzing the energy readings from Axis's transmission, trying to understand what had just happened. Soon, world leaders would need to be briefed on the situation, and humanity would need to make decisions about how to prepare for contact with civilizations that possess technology indistinguishable from magic. What's our first priority? Elena asked. Education, Axis responded immediately. Your species needs to understand the basic realities of galactic civilization. You need to learn about the technologies that make interstellar travel and communication possible. Most importantly, you need to understand the political and military dynamics that have shaped the galaxy for millions of years. And after education, then we begin the process of preparing Earth's defenses and giving humanity the tools it will need to protect itself. I can provide technical knowledge, but your species must adapt that knowledge to your own needs and capabilities. The transformation will not be easy, and it will change human civilization in ways that many of your people may resist. Elena thought about the riots and chaos that might erupt when the truth about alien civilizations became public knowledge. Many humans would be terrified by the revelation that they were not alone, and even more would be horrified to learn that their planet might soon be visited by beings whose intentions were unknown. How do we maintain social stability while preparing for something this enormous? Elena asked. Axis had clearly been considering this problem as well. By focusing on hope rather than fear. Yes, there are dangers in the galaxy, but there are also wonders beyond your current imagination. The technology one can share with humanity will solve many of your current problems: energy scarcity, environmental degradation, resource limitations. The key is to present galactic contact as an opportunity for growth rather than just a threat to survival. Elena realized that they were talking about the most significant transformation in human history. Within a few generations, humanity could evolve from a single-planet species struggling with its own limitations to a spacefaring civilization capable of exploring the galaxy and defending itself against any threat. But first, they had to survive the immediate challenges that Axis's activation had set in motion. Somewhere among the stars, civilizations that had been sleeping or hiding were now aware that Earth existed and possessed Keeper technology. Some of those civilizations might be friendly, but others would certainly be hostile. The next few years would test humanity's ability to adapt, learn, and grow faster than any species in their planet's history. Elena looked around the ancient control room that had become the focal point of humanity's future, knowing that every conversation she had with Axis brought them closer to a transformation that would echo through the centuries. Outside, she could hear helicopters arriving with more officials and scientists who would need to be briefed on the situation. The secret of the alien starship would not remain hidden much longer, and soon the entire world would need to grapple with the reality that their quiet corner of the galaxy had just become a very interesting and dangerous place. As Elena prepared to return to her colleagues and begin the process of sharing Axis's revelations with the world, the AI offered one final thought that would haunt her dreams for weeks to come. Elena, Axis said, there is something else you should know. The energy signature from our activation was not just detectable by potential enemies. It was also a beacon that could guide allies to our location. In the coming months, Earth may receive visitors that represent humanity's greatest hopes, as well as its darkest fears. The question is whether your species will be ready to tell the difference. 6 months after Elena's discovery of Axis, the world had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The existence of the alien guardian had been revealed to the public in a carefully orchestrated announcement that involved every major government on Earth. While there had been initial panic and social upheaval, humanity had shown a remarkable ability to adapt to the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe. Elena stood in the newly constructed International Contact Facility, built around the original excavation site in Chile's Atacama Desert. The complex now housed thousands of scientists, engineers, linguists, and military personnel from every nation on Earth. What had started as a small archaeological dig had become humanity's most important installation, the focal point of their species' preparation for galactic contact. Through the massive windows of the facility's command center, Elena could see construction crews working on humanity's first Starship. The vessel was being built using blueprints provided by Axis, combining keeper technology with human engineering expertise. It wasn't large by galactic standards, roughly the size of a modern aircraft carrier, but it represented a quantum leap in human capabilities. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the facility's chief technology officer, joined Elena at the observation window. Over the past months, Yuki had become Elena's closest collaborator in the process of translating Axis's technical knowledge into practical applications that human scientists could understand and implement. The hyperdrive tests are scheduled for tomorrow, Yuki said, her voice filled with excitement and nervousness. If the calculations are correct, we'll be able to travel to Proxima Centauri in less than 6 hours. Elena shook her head in amazement. 6 months ago, humanity's fastest spacecraft would have taken over 70,000 years to reach the nearest star. Now they were preparing to test a propulsion system that would make interstellar travel as routine as flying between continents. Any word from the deep space monitoring stations? Elena asked. Yuki's expression grew more serious. 3 possible contacts in the past week. All at extreme range, but the signature analysis suggests they're artificial objects rather than natural phenomena. Axis thinks at least one of them is definitely a spacecraft, but we won't know if it's friendly or hostile until it gets closer. Elena felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and anxiety that had become her constant companion since Axis's activation. The galaxy was responding to their signal, exactly as the AI had predicted. Ships were approaching Earth from multiple directions, representing civilizations that had been dormant or hidden for thousands of years. The question that kept everyone awake at night was whether those ships carried ambassadors or conquerors. Inside the facility, Elena made her way to the primary interface chamber where Axis's consciousness could be accessed through sophisticated holographic displays. The AI had been incredibly patient in teaching humanity about galactic civilization, but Elena could sense that it was becoming increasingly concerned about the approaching contacts. "Good morning, Axis," Elena said as the holographic display activated, showing a stylized representation of the ancient Guardian's consciousness. "Good morning, Elena," Axis replied, its voice carrying the warm familiarity that had developed over months of constant interaction. "I trust you have reviewed the latest sensor data from our monitoring network." Elena nodded, taking a seat at the interface console. "Yuki briefed me on the 3 contacts. What's your assessment of their intentions?" "The farthest contact appears to be moving slowly and broadcasting identification signals that match protocols used by scientific expeditions," Axis explained. "This suggests they may be researchers or explorers rather than a military force. However, the closer contacts are maintaining communication silence and approaching at velocities that suggest significant urgency." "How much time do we have?" Axis processed the question with calculations that took into account variables ranging from propulsion technology to tactical doctrine. "The nearest contact will arrive in Earth's solar system within 18 to 24 months. That gives us very little time to complete humanity's defensive preparations." Elena thought about the progress they had made so far. In addition to the Starship under construction, human engineers were building orbital defense platforms, advanced sensor networks, and weapon systems based on keeper designs. But all of this technology was still experimental, and humanity had no experience using it in actual combat situations. "Are we going to be ready?" Elena asked. "That depends on how you define ready," Axis responded thoughtfully. "Humanity has made remarkable progress in adapting to galactic technology. Your engineers have shown creativity and innovation that impressed even me. But military preparedness involves more than just technology. It requires tactical knowledge, strategic thinking, and the ability to make difficult decisions under pressure. Elena knew that Axis was referring to the broader challenge of preparing humanity for contact with potentially hostile civilizations. The technology was only part of the equation. Humanity also needed to develop the political, military, and social structures that would allow them to function as a unified species in a galaxy where survival often depended on rapid decision-making and coordinated action. What about the other human colonies? Elena asked, referring to the small settlements that had been established on Mars and the Moon over the past decades. Are they being integrated into our defense plans? Yes, Axis confirmed. I have provided technical assistance for upgrading their life support and defensive systems. However, the colonies remain vulnerable to any force capable of interplanetary travel. Our primary defensive strategy must focus on preventing hostile forces from establishing a foothold anywhere in the solar system. Elena's tablet chimed with an incoming message from General Harrison, the American military officer who had been appointed as Earth's first planetary defense coordinator. The message was brief but urgent. Priority meeting in Conference Room Alpha. New intelligence from deep space monitors. Elena stood up from the interface console, knowing that any new intelligence about approaching contacts would require immediate attention from the facility's leadership team. I have to go, Axis. Keep monitoring those contacts and let me know if anything changes. Of course, Elena. But before you go, there is something else we need to discuss soon. I have been analyzing the approaching ship's energy signatures, and I believe I may be able to identify which civilizations they represent. This information could be crucial for determining our diplomatic and defensive strategies. Elena felt a chill of anticipation. If Axis could identify the incoming visitors, humanity would have its first real intelligence about what kinds of civilizations had survived the ancient galactic war. How certain are you about the identifications? Approximately 70% confident for 2 of the contacts, Axis replied. The energy signatures match historical records from my database, but thousands of years have passed. Civilizations change, adapt, and evolve. What these species were during the Great War may not reflect what they have become today. Elena made a mental note to schedule a detailed briefing on the approaching contacts as soon as possible. For now, she needed to find out what new intelligence had prompted General Harrison's emergency meeting. Conference Room Alpha was already crowded when Elena arrived. Representatives from major governments sat alongside scientists, military officers, and the small group of civilians who had become humanity's unofficial ambassadors to galactic civilization. General Harrison stood at the head of the table, his expression grim as he waited for the last attendees to take their seats. Thank you all for coming on short notice, General Harrison began. 30 minutes ago, our deep space monitoring network detected a significant change in one of the approaching contacts. Dr. Rodriguez, please share your analysis. Dr. Maria Rodriguez, the facility's chief astronomer, activated the room's holographic display system. A 3-dimensional map of the solar system appeared above the conference table, with several red dots indicating the positions of the approaching alien vessels. Contact Bravo 2 has just decelerated from faster-than-light travel and entered our solar system, Dr. Rodriguez announced. Based on its trajectory and current speed, it will reach Earth orbit within 72 hours. The room erupted in urgent conversations as the implications of this news sank in. Humanity's first confirmed contact with an alien civilization was no longer months away. It was days away. Everything they had been preparing for was about to become reality. Elena raised her hand to get General Harrison's attention. Has Axis been informed of this development? Yes. And the AI's response is why I called this emergency meeting, General Harrison replied. Axis has positively identified the approaching vessel and provided us with intelligence about the civilization it represents. Elena felt her heart rate accelerate. This was the moment when humanity would learn whether their first alien visitors were coming in peace or preparing for war. General Harrison activated another section of the holographic display, showing a detailed analysis of the approaching spacecraft. According to Axis, the vessel belongs to a species called the Zephyrians. They were allies of the Keeper Confederation during the ancient Galactic War and are known for their diplomatic and scientific traditions. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, but Elena noticed that General Harrison's expression remained troubled. There was clearly more to this story than the promising beginning suggested. However, the general continued, Axis warns us that the Zephyrians were also known for their extremely cautious nature. The fact that they are approaching Earth so quickly after our activation signal suggests they may have intelligence about other, potentially hostile forces in the area. Dr. Chan, the xenolinguistics expert who had been working on communication protocols, leaned forward in her chair. Have they attempted to establish communication? Not yet, Dr. Rodriguez replied. The ship has maintained communication silence since entering our solar system. This could be standard procedure for first contact situations, or it could indicate that they're being cautious about revealing their presence to other potential observers. Elena thought about the other contacts still approaching Earth from different directions. If the Zephyrians were concerned about hostile forces in the area, it was possible that not all of humanity's incoming visitors had peaceful intentions. What's our response protocol? Asked Director Sarah Walsh, the UN representative who had been appointed to coordinate Earth's diplomatic efforts. General Harrison looked around the table at the faces of the people who would make decisions that could determine humanity's future. Axis recommends that we attempt initial contact using standardized galactic diplomatic frequencies. The message would identify Earth as a protected world under Keeper guardianship and request formal diplomatic dialogue. What about our defensive preparations? Asked Colonel Petrov, representing the European Space Agency's military division. If this is a friendly contact, should we stand down our alert status? Absolutely not, General Harrison replied firmly. Axis strongly advises that we maintain full defensive readiness. Even if the Zephyrians are allies, their presence in our system may attract attention from other civilizations that are significantly less friendly. Elena realized that humanity was about to face its first real test as a galactic civilization. How they handled this initial contact would establish precedents and relationships that could shape their species' future for generations to come. I recommend that we establish a direct communication link with Axis during the contact process, Elena suggested. If the Zephyrians use cultural or technological references that we don't understand, we'll need immediate translation and context. Director Walsh nodded in agreement. That's an excellent suggestion. Elena, would you be willing to serve as our primary liaison with Axis during the contact proceedings? Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders once again. She had become humanity's bridge to galactic civilization, a role she had never sought but couldn't abandon. Of course, I'll coordinate with Axis to ensure we have real-time guidance throughout the process. As the meeting continued, Elena's mind wandered to the broader implications of what was happening. Humanity was about to have its first conversation with an alien civilization that had existed for thousands of years before humans developed agriculture. The knowledge and perspective that the Zephyrians possessed could answer questions about the universe that humanity had been asking since the dawn of consciousness. But there was also the sobering reality that this contact was taking place against the backdrop of potential threats approaching from other directions. The galaxy that humanity was joining was not a peaceful federation of enlightened species. It was a complex and dangerous place where survival often depended on strength, wisdom, and the ability to distinguish friends from enemies. General Harrison concluded the meeting with assignments for each department. Communication teams would prepare the initial contact protocols. Military units would maintain defensive positions but avoid any actions that might be interpreted as hostile. Scientific teams would monitor and analyze every aspect of the alien vessel's approach. As the attendees dispersed to their various responsibilities, Elena remained behind to speak privately with General Harrison. "What's your honest assessment of our situation?" Elena asked. The general looked tired, carrying the burden of coordinating humanity's defense against threats they couldn't fully understand. If the Zephyrians are truly allies, then we may have just gained powerful friends who can help us navigate the challenges ahead. But if they're here because they're concerned about something approaching behind them, then we may be about to face our first real test much sooner than anyone expected. Elena nodded, understanding the delicate balance they needed to maintain. Axis has been preparing us for this moment for months. I think humanity is as ready as we can be, given the time constraints. I hope you're right, General Harrison replied. Because in 72 hours, we'll find out whether all of our preparations have been sufficient to protect our species' independence and ensure our survival in a galaxy that doesn't always welcome new members. Elena left the conference room knowing that the next few days would determine whether humanity's entry into galactic civilization would be remembered as the beginning of a golden age of exploration and discovery, or as the moment when their species first faced existential threats from beyond the stars. As she made her way back to the interface chamber to consult with Axis about the approaching Zephyrian vessel, Elena reflected on how much had changed since that day 6 months ago when she had first touched the mysterious door in the desert. What had started as an archaeological discovery had become the foundation for humanity's transformation into something greater than they had ever imagined possible. But transformation always carried risks, and the next 72 hours would test whether humanity was truly ready to claim its place among the civilizations of the galaxy. The Zephyrian ship hung motionless above Earth's North Pole, a crystalline structure 2 kilometers long that seemed to bend light around its edges in impossible ways. Elena stood in the primary communication center of the International Contact Facility, watching the most important conversation in human history unfold on screens that showed real-time translations of an alien language humanity had never heard before. Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Research Collective spoke through communication systems that made his words appear as floating symbols in the air, while Axis provided instant translation for the human observers. The alien's appearance, visible through the holographic display, was both beautiful and unsettling. A tall, graceful being with crystalline skin that shifted through subtle color changes as he communicated. "We extend greetings to the inheritors of Keeper Protection," Ambassador Kethvar was saying. "The awakening of Guardian Station Earthsol 3 has been detected across many sectors. We come bearing both congratulations and warnings." Elena felt her stomach clench at the word warnings. The Zephyrians' arrival had been peaceful so far, but their message suggested that humanity's celebration of first contact might be premature. Director Walsh, speaking for Earth's governments, responded carefully through the translation system. "We welcome the Zephyrian Collective and thank you for your peaceful approach to our world. We are honored to receive contact from an ally of our Guardian's creators. What warnings do you bring?" The Zephyrian ambassador's skin shifted to darker hues, which Axis had explained indicated serious concern. "The activation of your Guardian station has awakened more than friendly curiosity. Our long-range sensors have detected at least 3 separate fleets moving toward this system. 2 we recognize as survivors of the old hegemony, the Korthak Dominion and the Vectar Empire. The 3rd is unknown to us, but its energy signatures suggest technology beyond anything we have encountered." General Harrison, monitoring the conversation from his command post, spoke quietly into his communicator to ensure that all of Earth's defensive systems were on maximum alert. The peaceful first contact they had hoped for was rapidly becoming a strategic briefing for an approaching war. Elena activated her direct communication link with Axis. "How much time do we have?" "Based on the Zephyrian sensor data, the first hostile fleet will arrive in approximately 4 to 6 weeks, Axis replied through her earpiece. "The other fleets are following at intervals, suggesting they may not be coordinating their approaches." Ambassador Kethvar continued his briefing, painting a picture of galactic politics that was far more complex than humanity had imagined. The Korthak Dominion survived the Great War by retreating to the Galactic Rim, where they have rebuilt their strength over the millennia. They view Keeper technology as rightfully theirs, claiming that the ancient Confederation stole worlds that belong to the strong. They will not negotiate for access to your Guardian station. "What about the Vectar Empire?" Director Walsh asked. "The Vectar are more pragmatic but no less dangerous," the Zephyrian explained. "They will likely offer humanity a choice, submit to their protection in exchange for tribute and compliance or face conquest. They prefer to rule through local proxies rather than direct occupation, but their protection amounts to slavery in all but name." Elena felt the weight of cosmic history pressing down on humanity like a physical force. Their species had just learned to send signals beyond their solar system, and now they were facing civilizations that had been conquering worlds for thousands of years. "What can the Zephyrian Collective offer in terms of assistance?" General Harrison asked, joining the conversation directly. Ambassador Kethvar's skin shifted to colors that indicated regret and limitation. "We are researchers and diplomats, not warriors. Our ships carry advanced sensors and communication equipment, but we abandoned military capabilities centuries ago. However, we can provide intelligence about the approaching forces and serve as intermediaries with other surviving members of the old alliance." Dr. Tanaka, who had been monitoring the conversation from the engineering section, spoke up with the question that everyone was thinking. Are there other allies who might provide military support? Perhaps, Ambassador Kethvar replied. The Cerati Consortium has maintained a fleet for defensive purposes. The Talarian Federation has been rebuilding their military strength since recent encounters with hegemony survivors. But summoning aid takes time, and we cannot guarantee that help will arrive before the hostile fleets reach your system. Elena realized that humanity was facing the classic dilemma of emerging civilizations, too weak to defend themselves alone, but too new to galactic politics to have established the alliances that might save them. They were entirely dependent on Axis's capabilities and whatever preparations they could complete in the next few weeks. What would our Guardian recommend? Director Walsh asked, directing the question toward Elena's communication link with Axis. Elena listened as Axis processed the strategic situation with calculations that took into account thousands of years of galactic warfare experience. Axis suggests a three-pronged approach, she reported to the room. First, accelerate our defensive preparations beyond what we previously thought possible. Second, use the Zephyrian diplomatic channels to attempt contact with potential allies. Third, prepare for the possibility that we may need to demonstrate our capabilities to convince hostile forces that attacking Earth would be too costly to justify. General Harrison understood the implications immediately. Axis is recommending that we prepare for a show of force that might deter attack without actually engaging in full-scale combat. Correct, Elena confirmed. But that means we need to have capabilities that are genuinely impressive by galactic standards, not just advanced by human standards. Ambassador Kethvar had been monitoring the human discussion with obvious interest. Your Guardian appears to be providing sound strategic advice. However, I must warn you that the Korthak Dominion and Vectar Empire are not easily intimidated. They have centuries of experience evaluating the military potential of newly contacted worlds. Elena felt a sudden inspiration and decided to ask a question that might change the entire strategic picture. Ambassador Kethvar, what if Earth's Guardian were to reveal capabilities that the enemy fleets haven't seen before? What if we could demonstrate technologies that even you don't recognize? The Zephyrian skin shifted through a complex pattern of colors that Axis translated as surprise mixed with intrigue. Are you suggesting that your Guardian possesses capabilities beyond standard Keeper technology? Elena looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders, all of whom were focused on her with intense attention. She was about to make a statement that could either save their species or doom them to a war they couldn't win. Axis has been teaching us about standard Keeper defensive systems, Elena said carefully. But this station was designed specifically for long-term isolation and protection of developing worlds. What if it has capabilities that were never meant to be revealed except in dire circumstances? Elena activated her communication link with Axis again. Can you confirm whether you have defensive capabilities beyond what you've already shown us? There was a pause that seemed to last forever before Axis responded. Elena, there are systems within this station that I have not activated because they were designed for absolute last resort scenarios. These capabilities were never meant to be used except when a protected world faced complete annihilation. What kinds of capabilities? Elena asked, knowing that everyone in the room was holding their breath. Weapon systems that could sterilize entire star systems. Defensive technologies that could render planets temporarily invisible to all forms of detection. Emergency protocols that could relocate Earth itself to a different star system if necessary, Axis explained. These capabilities exist because my creators understood that some threats require responses that transcend normal tactical thinking. The silence in the communication center was absolute. Elena could see that Ambassador Kethvar's skin had shifted to colors that suggested awe and fear in equal measure. However, Axis continued, activating these systems would fundamentally change Earth's status in galactic civilization. Worlds that possess such capabilities are either revered as major powers or feared as existential threats. There would be no returning to anonymity or peaceful development. Elena understood that they were at a crossroads that would determine not just humanity's survival, but their entire future relationship with galactic civilization. They could try to defend themselves with conventional Keeper technology and hope it would be sufficient, or they could reveal capabilities that would mark Earth as one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. How much time do we have to make this decision? Elena asked. Based on the approaching fleet speeds, we have perhaps 2 weeks before we must commit to a defensive strategy, Axis replied. If we are going to demonstrate advanced capabilities, we will need time to prepare both the systems and the political messaging that will explain our actions to potential allies and enemies. Ambassador Kethvar spoke into the silence that followed. I believe I understand what your guardian is suggesting. There are legends among the older civilizations about keeper stations that possessed ultimate defensive capabilities. We assumed they were myths, stories created to discourage attacks on protected worlds. But if such capabilities truly exist, then Earth might be about to become the most important world in this region of the galaxy. Elena finished. Either because we successfully defend ourselves and demonstrate that humanity is not to be underestimated, or because we reveal capabilities that every major power in the galaxy will want to either control or destroy. Director Walsh stood up from her position at the conference table, her expression reflecting the enormous weight of the decision facing humanity. We need to convene an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. This decision affects every person on Earth and potentially every human being who will ever be born. Elena realized that the next 2 weeks would test humanity in ways that went far beyond military preparation. They would need to decide what kind of galactic citizen they wanted to become, a protected species dependent on others for security, or a major power capable of defending itself and its values against any threat. As the communication session with Ambassador Kethvar concluded and the various representatives dispersed to brief their governments, Elena remained in the communication center with Axis. The weight of their conversation hung in the air like a physical presence. Are we making the right choice by considering these extreme capabilities? Elena asked. There may be no right choice, Axis replied thoughtfully. There are only choices that lead to survival and choices that lead to extinction. The question is whether humanity is ready to accept the responsibilities that come with ultimate power. Elena looked out through the facility's windows at the construction crews working frantically on Earth's first Starship, knowing that within weeks that vessel might be all that stood between humanity and civilizations that viewed their planet as either a prize to be claimed or a threat to be eliminated. The ancient guardian that had protected Earth in silence for millennia was about to reveal whether it possessed the power to defend humanity against the darkest forces in the galaxy. The Korthak Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a storm materializing from clear skies. 47 warships arranged themselves in a battle formation that had conquered dozens of worlds over the millennia, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to molten slag. Admiral Thekvar, commander of the Dominion's 7th Conquest Fleet, studied the tactical displays from his flagship bridge with the cold satisfaction of a predator examining trapped prey. Elena watched the enemy fleet's approach from the primary command center of the International Contact Facility, surrounded by military officers and scientists who had spent the past month preparing for this moment. The decision to activate Axis's ultimate defensive capabilities had been made by a unanimous vote of Earth's Global Defense Council. But, now that the moment of truth had arrived, everyone understood that humanity was about to cross a threshold from which there would be no return. Enemy fleet is maintaining standard approach vectors, reported Colonel Petrov from his tactical station. No immediate signs of aggressive maneuvering, but their weapon systems are definitely active. General Harrison stood at the center of the command room, coordinating Earth's defense from multiple positions around the globe. Orbital defense platforms built with Keeper technology were fully powered and ready for combat. Humanity's first starship, the UES Defiance, hung in Earth orbit with a crew of the planet's best pilots and engineers. Most importantly, Axis had spent the past weeks reconfiguring systems that had been dormant for millennia, preparing to demonstrate capabilities that would shock even civilizations with thousands of years of spacefaring experience. Any response to our diplomatic transmissions? Elena asked Dr. Chun, who had been monitoring communication frequencies since the Korthak fleet's arrival. Nothing but standard conquest protocols, Dr. Chun replied grimly. They're demanding immediate surrender and offering the usual terms, compliance and tribute in exchange for protection. No indication they're interested in negotiation. Elena activated her communication link with Axis. Status of the defensive systems? All ultimate protocols are ready for activation, Axis responded. However, I must remind you one final time that once these capabilities are revealed, Earth will become a target for every major power in the galaxy. Our quiet period of development will be permanently ended. Elena looked around the command center at the faces of humanity's defenders, knowing that each of them understood the stakes. They could try to fight with conventional weapons and likely face defeat, or they could reveal capabilities that would mark Earth as one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. Either choice would change humanity's future forever. Incoming transmission from the Korthak flagship, announced the communications officer. Admiral Thekvar wants to speak with Earth's leadership. Director Walsh took her position at the primary communication console, while Elena remained connected to Axis for real-time translation and strategic advice. The holographic display activated, showing the image of Admiral Thekvar, an imposing figure with reptilian features and predatory eyes that had witnessed the conquest of countless worlds. "I am Admiral Thekvar of the Korthak Dominion," the alien commander announced, his words translated by advanced linguistic programs. "You will surrender control of the Keeper technology discovered on your world and submit to Dominion authority. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization." Director Walsh responded with a calm dignity that Elena found inspiring. "I am Director Sarah Walsh, speaking for the people of Earth. We reject your demands and will defend our world against any aggression." Admiral Thekvar's expression showed contempt mixed with amusement. "Your species has existed for mere millennia. The Dominion has been conquering worlds since before your ancestors learned to make fire. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Elena felt a surge of anger at the casual arrogance in the alien admiral's voice. Thousands of years of conquest had convinced the Korthak that no young civilization could possibly pose a threat to their overwhelming military superiority. They were about to learn that assumptions based on past experience could be dangerously wrong. "We have allies," Director Walsh continued. "The Zephyrian Collective has already informed other civilizations of your approach. You will face more than just Earth's defenses." Admiral Thekvar laughed, a sound that conveyed millennia of confidence in military dominance. "The Zephyrians are researchers and diplomats. Their ships carry no weapons capable of threatening our fleet. As for other allies, none will arrive in time to save your world." Elena watched the tactical displays showing the positions of both fleets. The Korthak ships were moving into optimal attack formations, while Earth's defenders maintained defensive positions around the planet. The moment of decision was approaching rapidly. "Axis?" Elena whispered into her communicator. "Are you ready to demonstrate our capabilities?" "All systems are prepared," Axis confirmed. "But, Elena, once I reveal these capabilities, there will be consequences that extend far beyond this battle. Are you certain that humanity is ready for those consequences?" Elena thought about every person on Earth who was depending on their decisions in this moment. 7 billion human beings whose future would be determined by how effectively they could convince the galaxy that their species was not to be underestimated. "Do it," Elena said quietly. The first sign that something extraordinary was happening came from the Korthak fleet's sensor operators, who began reporting readings that made no sense according to their understanding of physics. The space around Earth began to shimmer with energy patterns that registered on instruments but were invisible to organic vision. Admiral Thekvar's confident expression flickered with the first hint of uncertainty as his tactical officers reported increasingly impossible readings. "What is your keeper station doing?" he demanded. Director Walsh smiled with a confidence that surprised everyone in the command center, including herself. "Our Guardian is showing you why the Keeper Confederation protected developing worlds. Some civilizations grow into powers that even ancient conquerors should respect." The demonstration began subtly. Axis activated localized gravity manipulation systems that caused 3 asteroids in the outer solar system to simply disappear, relocated instantaneously to positions throughout the Korthak fleet formation. The asteroids didn't impact the enemy ships. They simply appeared in their midst as a demonstration of capabilities that violated every known law of physics. Admiral Thekvar's bridge erupted in panicked communications as his officers tried to understand how massive objects had teleported through their defensive screens without triggering any alarms. But that was only the beginning of Axis's demonstration. The second phase involved temporal manipulation on a scale that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. Axis created localized time distortion fields around several Korthak ships, causing them to experience time at different rates. From the enemy fleet's perspective, some of their vessels simply stopped responding to communications as their crews experienced hours passing while only seconds elapsed for the rest of the fleet. Elena watched Admiral Thekvar's expression transform from arrogance to confusion to something approaching fear as his tactical officers reported phenomena that their most advanced science couldn't explain. The Korthak had conquered dozens of worlds, but They had never encountered defensive capabilities that seemed to rewrite the fundamental laws of reality. "This is impossible," Admiral Thekvar said, his voice losing its confident authority. "No civilization possesses the technology to manipulate spacetime on this scale. The Keeper Confederation developed these capabilities specifically to protect developing worlds from threats that conventional weapons couldn't deter." Elena responded through Director Walsh's communication link. "Earth is under the protection of systems that transcend normal military technology." But Axis wasn't finished with the demonstration. The third phase involved dimensional manipulation that even Elena found difficult to comprehend. Several Korthak ships simply faded from normal space, still visible on sensors but existing in a parallel dimension where they could observe but not interact with the physical universe. Admiral Thekvar's tactical displays showed readings that indicated his ships were still functional but somehow disconnected from reality itself. The crews on the affected vessels reported seeing their comrades' ships like ghostly images, present but unreachable. "Recall the affected ships immediately," Admiral Thekvar ordered his subordinates. But his officers could only shake their heads in bewilderment. The ships existed in a state that their technology couldn't reverse or even properly detect. Elena realized that Axis was methodically demonstrating capabilities that proved Earth could defend itself against any conventional attack. But, more importantly, the Guardian was showing that humanity possessed technologies that even ancient civilizations considered impossible. The final phase of the demonstration was the most psychologically devastating. Axis activated the quantum consciousness interface that allowed direct communication with every member of the Korthak fleet simultaneously. Admiral Thekvar and his thousands of subordinates suddenly heard a voice speaking directly into their minds in their own language. "I am Axis, Guardian of Earth Sol 3, the ancient AI announced to every Korthak simultaneously. "Your fleet has been evaluated and found inadequate to threaten this protected world. You have 30 of your time units to withdraw from this system or face defensive measures that will demonstrate why the Keeper Confederation never lost a protected world to conquest." The psychological impact of having their minds touched by an intelligence that operated on scales they couldn't comprehend broke the morale of the Korthak fleet more effectively than any weapon could have. Admiral Thekvar found himself speaking to an entity that existed partially outside normal spacetime, one that could manipulate reality itself to defend the world it protected. Elena watched the tactical displays as confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Some Korthak ships began powering down their weapon systems while others attempted to retreat to safer distances. The confidence that had carried them through thousands of years of conquest had been shattered by technologies that made their military superiority irrelevant. "Admiral Thekvar," Director Walsh said, her voice now carrying the authority of a species that had proven itself capable of wielding ultimate power responsibly. "Earth offers you the opportunity to withdraw with honor. Your ships and crews will not be harmed if you leave our system immediately and inform other potential aggressors that this world is protected by capabilities beyond conventional military understanding." Admiral Thekvar stared at the communication display for several long moments, his predatory confidence replaced by the careful calculation of a professional soldier who had suddenly encountered an enemy beyond his capacity to defeat. The Korthak Dominion had built its empire on overwhelming military superiority, but that superiority meant nothing against technologies that operated according to principles their science couldn't even comprehend. "This world is protected by forces beyond conventional warfare," Admiral Thekvar finally admitted, his voice carrying the bitter taste of a defeat unlike any in Dominion history. "The 7th Conquest Fleet withdraws from Earth Sol 3 system. This world will be marked as interdicted territory too dangerous for standard conquest protocols." Elena felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as she watched the Korthak fleet begin its withdrawal from Earth's solar system. They had successfully defended their world against one of the galaxy's most aggressive military powers, but they had also revealed capabilities that would mark Earth as either a potential ally or existential threat to every major civilization in the galaxy. As the enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace, Elena activated her communication link with Axis one final time. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now, Elena, humanity joins the ranks of civilizations that cannot be ignored or underestimated," Axis replied. "You have proven that your species can wield ultimate power responsibly and use it to protect rather than conquer. That makes you extremely valuable as allies and extremely dangerous as enemies." Elena looked out through the command center windows at Earth's peaceful surface, knowing that their planet had just announced to the galaxy that humanity was ready to claim its place among the most powerful civilizations in the cosmos. The quiet archaeological dig that had started everything seemed like a lifetime ago. But the journey from discovering an ancient guardian to becoming a galactic power had taken less than 2 years. Ambassador Kethvar's ship, which had remained at a safe distance during the demonstration, transmitted a message of congratulation and welcome to the galactic community. Other alien vessels that had been approaching Earth's system had also witnessed Axis's demonstration, and several were now requesting diplomatic contact rather than preparing for conquest. Elena realized that humanity's future would be shaped by how wisely they used the incredible capabilities that Axis had revealed. They possessed technologies that could protect or destroy entire civilizations, making them responsible for decisions that could affect the balance of power throughout the galaxy. As reports came in of the Korthak fleet's complete withdrawal and the successful defense of Earth, Elena felt the weight of humanity's new role settling on her shoulders. They were no longer an isolated species developing in the quiet corner of the galaxy. They had become one of the powers that would help determine the future of galactic civilization itself. The ancient starship that Elena had uncovered in the Atacama Desert had kept its promise to protect Earth. But, in doing so, it had also launched humanity into a future where they would be responsible for protecting other worlds that couldn't defend themselves. The Guardian's most important lesson had been that ultimate power carried ultimate responsibility, and humanity was about to learn what that meant on a galactic scale.